straight from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Welcome to our 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration event. It is my privilege to join the Durham Tech community for the event this year, as this is one of the long traditions of Durham Technical Community College. In fact, this institution has been celebrating this day from the year before it became a federal national holiday. The year that we have just seen pass, 2020, saw issues of racial equity and calls for racial justice, issues of healthcare equity and calls for healthcare justice amidst a pandemic disproportionately affected many in our community, and calls for economic equity and justice at a time when we saw the pandemic hit us in an economic way that was disproportionately affecting members of our community. Durham Tech has stood not just in the middle, but at the forefront of this fight for racial, economic, healthcare, and indeed human justice and equity. When we think of Dr. Martin Luther King on this hallowed day, we often go back to the 1963 March and his comments about the content of our character, not the color of our skin, predetermining our opportunities and possibilities in life. What I think is important to recall is that 1963 March was not just about racial equity. It was a march for jobs and freedom. It was about the twin messages of racial equity and economic justice that really defined the whole of Martin Luther King's fierce advocacy and leadership, moral leadership for this country. This year's theme, where do we go from here, chaos or community, harkens back to the King and his leadership of 1967, when his book, From Chaos to Community, was first drafted and introduced, and really 1968, when he began the Poor People's Campaign and a focus on economic justice that he thought was the most important determiner of opportunity, equality of opportunity in this country. On the heels of this 2020 year of pandemic, racial equity, and economic opportunity, what are not new but questions that have been given fresh sense of urgency. Today is a critical day where Durham Tech continues to plant its flag of leadership on these key issues. We stand with Dr. King and his legacy for both racial justice and economic justice. We stand firmly for upward economic mobility for all in our state, in our country. And we stand ready to support our fellow residents, our students, our faculty, our staff, our key stakeholders, all members of our community who fight for racial justice and economic justice. The question that Dr. King asked back in 1967 and 1968, in the years and months before his death, where do we go from here, chaos or community, is one that we need to now ask ourselves. But not just to ask, to find the answer to. For we stand as leaders in this community for deciding whether it is chaos or community that will define the next steps. We stand as leaders for deciding whether upward economic mobility will define the lives and the trajectories of the students who come to our institution, and deciding if, in fact, we will see equitable opportunity dominate the fabric and the story of our community. I believe that it will, because I believe that we will provide that leadership and that fierce advocacy for not just the students who come to our institution, but all the members of this community who depend upon us for the good works and doing great things. Thank you for your participation today, and I look forward, along with you, to this program.
Once upon a time, there's a man named Martin Luther King Jr. It's funny to think about because now we know his name so well, but at one time he was just a kid. Like maybe you're a kid watching this. Well, he was a kid too. Well, maybe you're a grown-up. That's okay too. Former kids are welcome here. I don't discriminate. Martin Luther King grew up to be a great man, of course, but things weren't all that great in the world while he was growing up. Not everybody was treated like they were somebody. And I believe that you should treat everybody like it's their birthday. But they didn't do that. People looked at the color of their skin. And that's how they decided if they were friends or not. Not cool, man. That didn't make him feel good. That didn't make anybody feel good. But his parents helped him grow up. He went to church. He learned about love. He grew up to be a minister to help a lot of people. He did all sorts of cool stuff. He helped a lot of people learn about love too. But still, he looked around and said, things should be better. He wanted to change things, so he did stuff. He decided, instead of spreading the hate, he would spread the love. He wanted to bring people together. Where people were hurting, he stepped in to help. He marched with them, he walked with them. He walked arm in arm with everyone. And sometimes it didn't go well, but he kept going. Sometimes he ended up in prison, but he kept going. Some people didn't like him, but he kept going. Some days were hard, but he kept going. Love does that, it just keeps going, even when things are dark. And, well, I don't like this part of the story, but things did get pretty dark. Someone who didn't agree with him shot him. He died in April 1968. Now, keep pressing it. Why are you telling us this sad story? Come on. I know it. I'm sorry, but it happened. I don't like that happened. Now, I gotta tell you something. When things aren't awesome, it can be tough. And things will always be awesome, but your response can be. Martin Luther King's response? It was awesome. Today I just wanted us to think about this. Isn't it cool that we can change things? Like any of us, anybody. He dreamed and he changed things. And he dreamed and he kept sharing his dreams. They became not just his dream, a lot of people's dream. Like this one. I have a dream that little black boys and black girls will join hands with white boys and white girls and become sisters and brothers. That's a pretty good dream. Let's dream like that. That could change things.
And what do you think the world needs more of?
The world needs more love and compassion. You see a lot of hate all the time on the news and a lot of hate going on social media. We need to spread more love and positivity into the world.
Any words of encouragement for teachers teaching online classes?
Just hang in there. I know it's tough. I know it's hard not being able to be with your students and seeing us in person, but we still send a lot of love to you guys online, and we're all working through this together. We'll be back in the classroom soon. I have a nightmare that I'm not free, that I'm not equal, that I am a slave. I have a nightmare that one day there'll be a bullet hole in my white tee outside my house for my mother to see. Or my death being filmed and not receiving justice. Or being pulled over having too much melanin and being shot for an ID that I'm not giving them. They say freeze, don't move, but they never freeze their trigger fingers, so pain's the only thing that lingers. I have a nightmare that schools have outdated textbooks, old buildings that are not up to code, where kids learn about old white men who are more worried about how history looks than you learn about Nazi Germany and how genocide is wrong. But what about Black Wilmington and Tulsa? Oh yeah, nowhere to be found. What about Juneteenth and the rest of Black history? All the advances African Americans have made to society, but we're seen as a liability in the land of the free. The proof is our oppression, as you can see. I have a nightmare. Kaepernick took a knee and he's un-American, but we praise founding fathers that thought African Americans did not matter. Emmett Till was murdered by racists over a girl he was trying to flatter. I wish Martin Luther King's dream came true. His words flew over their head like a bird that flew. Sadly, that's not the case, as I try to make a better life for myself, as I had to work twice as hard for an equal chance. So today, I want everybody to hear my stance. I'm not here for empathy. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here to change your heart. Change the way you see minorities in this nation. We must learn from the past so we can take action. Love each other is the theme, then we'll see Martin's dream. I have a nightmare that when I open my eyes, this poem was true.
Resistance. Will you let yourself be taken by the tide? Will you walk among the strangers in the street? Will you see a common bond you share in life? Do you follow in the chaos of uncertainty? Will you give your energy to fear and doubt? Or will you stand your ground and hold on to community? Will you choose to walk the path of you and me? Will you choose to walk the path of you and me? Can you look beyond yourself for about a minute? Hold on to your hate, someday you will see that the knife cuts deeper than the wound that's made. And the gun takes more than just one person's life. Do you follow in the chaos of uncertainty? Will you give your energy to fear and doubt? Or will you stand your ground and hold on to community? Will you choose to walk the path of you and me? Will you choose to walk the path of you and me? There's enough of hate and fear to go around. Another life is taken, buried in the ground. Is death the only way for one to find their peace? If there's a God out there, please answer me. Should I follow in the chaos of uncertainty? Should I give my energy to fear and doubt? Will I try to stand my ground and hold on to community? Will you help me walk the path of unity? Help me walk the path of you and me.
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I still have a dream.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
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 Wake up!
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more back thinking, time for thinking ahead.
The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty.
Wake up, all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say.
They're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When we teach the children, teach them the very best we can.
The world won't get no better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah.
You bring peace, do we mean it? Can you feel it when we scream it out loud? Do you believe that we need it? Do you believe that it could get right? Do you believe that the children of this world deserve a good life? Well, if you do, it's time to wake up your mind. We can make it better, and I know it could take some time, but we gotta start somewhere. How about from you and me? From us it goes to others, then we'll have our unity.
Wake up, all the doctors, make the old people wail. They're the ones who suffer and who catch all the hail. But they don't have so very long before their judgment day. So won't you make them happy before they pass away.
All the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand.
The only thing we have to do is put it in our mind. Surely things will work out. They do it every time. The world won't get no better,
No better.
if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yes, you and me. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yes, you and me.
We gotta change it.
You and
Yeah.
me.
We gotta change it. Oh,
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping.
come on, wake up,
Wake up,
everybody.
everybody, no more sleeping.
Hey,
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping.
no.
Wake up, everybody,
Time for thinking.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping.
No.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping.
Yeah.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping.
Come on.
Wake up, everybody,
Time for thinking.
I had a chaos and community moment in the Phillips building a few years ago. There was an otherworldly scream, classroom door opens, student sprints out. She starts throwing her stuff from side to side, a backpack, a hat, notebook. She sprints out the door. So that sounded like chaos, it looked like chaos. Next thing I saw symbolized the community we have here at Durham Tech. One of her classmates quietly came out of the same door, walked down the hall, picked up the hat, picked up the backpack, picked up the notebook. And she was clearly just trying to make sure that her classmate, who was in distress, didn't lose her stuff. It was a small thing, but it was a moment of chaos and community. And for me, it symbolized that at Durham Tech, community wins. Take care.
I am not just pleased, but excited to introduce our keynote speaker for the 2021 King Day. Dr. Timothy Tyson has a joint appointment to our two institutions in our backyard, Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill. He's a senior research scholar at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University and an adjunct professor at UNC Chapel Hill in American Studies. Many of you know Dr. Tyson from his landmark book, Blood Done Sign My Name, which chronicled issues of race and economic justice in our backyard in Oxford, North Carolina. Some of you also know his more recent book, The Blood of Emmett Till, and many of you may know that both those books have been widely praised by critics and landed on the many best of lists when they were published. Some of you may know that Dr. Tyson has in fact been writing about the intersection of race and politics and culture and the economy dating back into the early 1990s. His is a long and illustrious, meritorious career of research, writing, and scholarly investigation of issues which stand squarely in the middle of the debate today in our country, and squarely in the middle of the work we are doing here at Durham Tech. Dr. Timothy Tyson has long been someone we wanted to bring to our King Day event, and while we regret that we can't have him in person in an auditorium with us today, we are very thankful that we are able to have him by the magic of videotape. And so now, without further ado, Dr. Timothy Tyson.
I'm honored to be invited to speak to Durham Tech for its Martin Luther King observances this year, the organizing principle of which is the title of Martin Luther King's 1967 Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? It's hard to imagine more appropriate questions to confront at this moment. And so first, just a word about the recent unpleasantness. Last week, our president orchestrated a ferocious attack on the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to invalidate the outcome of a free election, nothing short of a coup attempt, nothing short of treason. Some of the president's stormtroopers wore 6 million was not enough and Camp Auschwitz insignia. They beat a brave policeman to death. They badly injured over 50 police officers, 15 of them hospitalized. Several were beaten bloody with metal poles holding American flags. Our president urged the far-right extremists across the country to gather near the White House for a Save America march, promising them a wild ride. There he repeated the utter falsehood that his sacred landslide had been stolen, and he lifted the false hope that, as he put it, all Vice President Pence has to do is send the ballots back to the states to recertify, and we become president. Our president declared, when you catch someone in a fraud, you are allowed to go by very different rules. His attorney challenged the crowd to engage, to exercise combat justice. Before the president urged the mob to join him on his march to the Capitol, he warned, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Let the weak ones get out. This is a time for strength. The coward ducked his pledge to join the mob, but as Republican Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming states, there's no question that the president formed the mob, the president incited the mob, the president addressed the mob, the president lit the flames. So he was using mob violence to invalidate ballots that represent the will of millions of voters. He knew that mob included hundreds, if not thousands, of neo-Nazis and white supremacists who come to rallies routinely armed and who practice murderous violence. He dispatched them to the Congress the moment it was to certify President-elect Biden's electoral victory. During the assault itself, our president called senators, asking them to delay the vote while they were chanting in the Capitol, hang Mike Pence, announcing their intention to kill Nancy Pelosi and pounding on the doors while our elected representatives huddled in terror. Our president finally asked his lethal idiots to go home, but first he blessed their violence. These are the things that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home in love and peace. We love you. You are very special. Remember this day forever. I like that one in particular. How America remembers this day forever, and how we respond to these acts of malice and murder, insurrection and treason will forever shape the American story as we go forward. If our president is not impeached, convicted, prosecuted, and put in prison, then the American presidency will have become an unaccountable monarchy. I thought we were trying to get away from that sort of thing at one point. To debate the precise means and timing is legitimate, worth talking about. To let bygones be bygones in the name of national unity is national suicide. These images broke the hearts of millions who love democracy and cherish the vision of a nation grounded in love, respect, justice, and mercy. First, we have to cry, and then we have to work. Authors of the spirituals sang, "We are soldiers in the army. We have to fight, although we have to cry. We got to hold up the bloodstained banner. We got to hold it up until we die." We're not helpless, and our democracy is not at an end unless we let that banner fall. It's a perilous moment, and we have to stand up to it. We have to be large enough to enter it, to step into this historical moment. Not just for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You know, this democracy, which is very flawed, has always been, democracy has always been more or less a struggle. But nonetheless, anything like a democracy is just a flicker, a flash in time. In terms of world history, almost everywhere, almost all the time, the kings and emirs and potentates of various descriptions are taking all the profits, taking all of the resources of that place and steering them into just a few pockets, pulling the children of the poor into their armies to fight wars over such resources. And if you don't like those social arrangements and you say anything about it, they'll pull you out of your house in the middle of the night and kill you in front of your mama. Now that's how the world works. The world is a prison house. It always has been. And America's place is very important if literally, if the planet is going to have hope. We're the mightiest and wealthiest empire in the history of the world. And what we do with that and what we do with this thing that's been thrown on us is very, very important. We cannot remain silent. But enough about the recent unpleasantness. This evening, we're in the great city, one of fine educational institutions, none of which outmatch Durham Tech in high purpose and public service. It's been a great joy as a professor to watch Duke undergrads try to keep up with many of the Durham Tech students. But how can you expect bright-eyed 19-year-olds from Greenwich or Scarsdale to compete, whatever their SAT scores may be, to compete with two 50-year-old Black women, best friends, who sit on the front row and are thrilled to be there? Of course, I found that the Durham Tech students often cheat. That is to say, they do the reading. We got students at Duke who are too damn smart to read a book. If I seem a little prejudiced in favor of community colleges, maybe it's because that's where my college career began. I relished Ms. Montague's third grade class. She was brilliant and intuitive, and she let me go to the library anytime I wanted to. I could stay there for hours. The only condition was I had to find something interesting and come back and tell the other students about it. Now, which is what I've been doing for a living these past 30 years. But after third grade, I found school just one long prison movie, starring me as the least successful student in the history of school. I quit attending in September of my senior year. Left home, learned a trade, and never looked back. I was a 23-year-old freshman working full-time at Cook's Corner cooking. And I started taking community college courses at night. A history professor looked into my eyes and saw the fire that was burning in my mind and gave it fuel. Now that is the serious business of education. 57 years, a college diploma, a Duke PhD, a professorship at the University of Wisconsin in the Afro-American Studies Department, 3 published books later. I began to work on a book about the Emmett Till lynching of 1955. It was really hard, dark labor. I had to fight, although I had to cry. I didn't want to crawl down in that hole. A dark place. Mississippi, the Mississippi Delta in the 1950s, Chicago in the 1950s, hard places. And you can't tell the story unless you can imagine it. You have to fully imagine it. You have to enter into the documents, the newspaper articles and the interviews and the journals and the police files and all the things that historians use to put together, to do something that can't be done, which is to conjure the past and make it walk and talk so people can experience the past so that it can speak to their lives. And so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to imagine what was happening to Emmett Till. That was one day during that season of pain and good work too. I stood at the cash register and I wrote a check for the groceries. Now, many of you don't remember checks, but I know many of you do. Ask your parents. I got the amount right, and I got the signature right, and I even got the day right. But up there in the right-hand corner, the year, I put in 1955. The cashier found that really interesting. A historian's day unfolds in at least two places. One is the world in which she or he is trying is doing all this research about and trying to immerse themselves in, trying to understand this foreign country called the past. And then there's the world around in which the historian is working, the world that the historian is living in. So historians do kind of a deep dive into two worlds. But when we leave the archive or we leave the desk, these two worlds inform one another. The past colors the way you see the world around you, the way you see the present. And the present, history doesn't change as far as what happened back there, which, is impossible to know really fully. That we don't change facts, but in this world, you look back and suddenly things look very important sometimes. Because you see things that you wouldn't have seen because you can't see what you can't imagine, right? So in my case, as I was working on the blood of Emmett Till, I lived in four worlds really: Chicago in the 1950s, the Mississippi Delta in the 1950s, and then the world around me, in which my country was beginning to careen into yet another racial crisis. And a movement rose up all around me, to which most of us referred, putting it, very oversimply, Black Lives Matter, though that was only one of the many organizations that were in that movement and heading the same way. And then there was my day-to-day life, because I got pulled into the North Carolina NAACP by Reverend Dr. William Barber, and deeper and deeper. And I became a movement person, leading a movement life. And that fact colored the way I saw the past too. And that is why my story of Emmett Till is quite different than those that went before. It's usually been told as kind of a story about a horror movie starring Redneck Frankenstein. Sort of this distant, exotic, deep, dark of Mississippi, where the promise of American democracy hasn't quite reached yet, and the poor benighted Negro is waiting for college students from up north to come liberate their people. But and the story of Emmett Till's lynching is just the horror movie. One of the real problems with it is where it leaves us seeing ourselves. Because we're not monsters. We don't favor the butchery of young Black men. And And so we wring our hands and get a little purgative guilt, maybe, and then leave ourselves smelling like a rose. But to me, it's really a story about a mother in Chicago, Mamie Till Bradley. At that point, Mamie Till did an unusual thing. When she heard that the worst possible thing had happened, she heard that they had taken her boy, and he had not been found, and there was no reason to think he would be. She grew up in Mississippi to some extent. She had the people, Mississippi and Chicago are very intimately connected by thousands and thousands of people. There are more Black Mississippians in Chicago at the time than there were in Mississippi. And the most popular newspaper in Mississippi among African Americans was the Chicago Defender. And everybody, Black children in Chicago often went back and to see grandma or the great aunt in Mississippi and get a little taste of the world their parents grew up in. They weren't thinking about this sort of thing. They were thinking about fried chicken and pie and fishing with their granddaddy and things like that. Those were the pleasures of rural life. But so that was normal. But when she heard about what happened, that the white men had come drunk and armed and taken her boy out in the middle of the night, she did a strange thing for a Black woman in 1955. She started calling reporters. She called dozens of reporters. Even some of the new TV reporters. TV is about 2 years old, really. People have only had TV for a couple, bars had it and, had TV sometimes, and rich people had TV. But most people didn't get TV until about 1952, 3. So she called them too. And when his body came, she met him at the train station. There were thousands of people there because of what she'd done. And she decided to have an open casket funeral. Let the world see what they did to my boy. And the thing, she took her broken heart, the unspeakable depth of sorrow, and she turned it into a public issue. And she set out to topple the system that had killed him. That really, in fact, I can tell you Emmett Till stories all damn day. My mind is an atrocity map. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes it's hard, but this was not so unusual. What was unusual was what happened afterward. And what happened afterward was dependent on the Black power of Chicago. Black people have been going to Chicago for about 60 years. The Chicago Defender, the Johnson Publishing Company, which is Jet and Ebony, the Black, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Very important political Black union. And if you think about it, the Pullman porters have a job with Mr. Pullman in Chicago. The local white folks can't fire them. That's really a blessing they were important folks. And also they worked going up and down the railroads. This was before aviation was really how people got around. Affluent people back then went by the pool, slept in a Pullman car, waited on by a Pullman porter, and but the Pullman porters distributed newspapers, they distributed political information. They, if you wanted to put a flyer on every telephone pole in America, the Pullman porters could darn near pull it off. And A. Philip Randolph, their head, had learned his lessons under Reconstruction militants who had learned their lessons from slave rebels. He was tough. And then there was the United Packing House Workers. They had become an interracial union and were turning into a civil rights union. The same is true of the United Steel Workers. This is serious political muscle. Chicago also had the most powerful Black political organization in the world, which is to say, the William Dawson machine. Now, those of you know anything about Chicago think I must mean the Daley machine, but let us just recall that in 1955, the Dawson machine installed Richard Daley. He was their choice because the previous mayor was such a racist. And he depended on their votes for his career. He found some other things eventually, but at any rate, what I'm saying is that in the NAACP in Chicago was huge. It was run by labor union militants. It was nothing like, Roy Wilkins' upscale NAACP at the national office where they just want you to raise money and send it to them. It was an action NAACP, big progressive churches, all of these institutions, Mamie Till and her allies, and there was a large kind of sectarian left in Chicago too, who, whatever else I might think about them, they're good organizers. And they, so they were able to leverage, Mamie Till and her allies were able to leverage the power of all those institutions and make things happen. And then a nationwide movement came together with all those, this national infrastructure, raised tons of money. They funded the Montgomery bus boycott at the first, bought them a little fleet of union manufactured station wagons, which came in handy for a while there. They had raised money in Madison Square Garden in New York City with Eleanor Roosevelt and Adam Clayton Powell. Anyway, this really was the launching of a national civil rights movement. Meanwhile, in Mississippi, and most, Mississippi doesn't appear in a lot of the stories of Emmett Till, really. That national network that Mamie Till and her allies organized out of Chicago, but which were enabled by all of these pre-existing community institutions, many of which had national reach. That made something happen that wouldn't have happened. If Emmett Till had been from Mississippi, we'd probably not know his name. But Black Chicago was sort of the capital of Black America and had serious cultural and political power. And so there was that. And then Mississippi, which most people think of as, inert in those days. But I was just going to tell you about Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who was the surgeon at the hospital in Mount Bayou. In 1953, before the Brown decision, before Montgomery, before most of us think that the civil rights movement began, we've got photographs with 13,000 people in them on T.R.M. Howard's farm, eating tons of barbecue, literally, and having Mahalia Jackson and Congressman Charles Diggs from Detroit and other national figures. Thurgood Marshall actually was that year, in a voting rights symposium. So there are 13,000 people in Black folk in Mount Bayou, Mississippi in 1953, openly attending a voting rights symposium. Many of them have bumper stickers on their cars that say, "Don't buy gas where you can't use the bathroom." I wonder how the Mississippi Highway Patrol felt about that. But what I'm saying is, Mississippi had a movement going, a strong network. And that's very important too. After the men who killed, now, most stories of Emmett Till are grounded in the so-called confession of the two murderers to Look magazine in 1956. I guess people thought that if they had to admit to killing the 14-year-old boy in order to get the money from Look magazine, which was kind of a lot of money. But I think most people thought if you admit to that, you probably tell the truth about everything else. And but not a word of it was true. They were covering up for quite a few of their relatives, for example, who were involved in the murder. And they were also trying to make the case to the white audience that they imagined, basically, that Emmett Till had committed suicide, speaking to them in that way, and saying that he would have sex with white women, that he had sex with white women, that he would continue to have sex with white women. See, they're just they're just justifying themselves in the minds of white Mississippians as they imagined or knew them. but nothing of what they said was true. If you watch Eyes on the Prize, that's the narrative, but it's not the case. In any case, only 2 men went on trial. They were acquitted. And then a couple of weeks after they did, the Mississippi Underground, Dr. T.R.M. Howard and Medgar Evers and Amzie Moore and Aaron Henry, all these mostly World War II vets, many of them president of their local NAACP branch, all of them involved in the Regional Council on Negro Leadership, which was independent of the NAACP because they didn't want to do what the NAACP said necessarily. Anyway, these folks fanned out across America and told the story of Emmett Till which they knew intimately because they had been involved in finding all the witnesses for the trial and everybody who testified. And of course, everybody who testified had to be resettled in Chicago because it was suicidal for them to testify against 2 white men and then stay in Mississippi. At any rate, T.R.M. Howard, Dr. Howard spoke at Dexter Street Baptist Church a few days after the acquittals. And there was this unknown young preacher there named King who had invited him. Rosa Parks was in the audience, and she and Dr. Howard sat up after the meeting was over and sat up most of the night talking movement politics. 4 days later, she was arrested on the bus in Montgomery. She said later that she thought about Emmett Till and could not move. I want to spend a moment on Dr. King because there's some important things to know. As I said, we're talking about where do we go from here, chaos or community? Really pressing question. Another book title of Dr. King's is relevant to what I have to say here, which is called The Strength to Love. One of the chapter titles is A Tough Mind and a Tender Heart. Dr. King said that power without love is bankrupt, morally bankrupt. Love without power, though, was sentimental and vacant, pointless. What you had to do, he said, was to harness love to power. To act on your love, you must have the power to do so. And that moves us toward justice. Dr. King was a very conservative theologian. He thought that humanity was mired in sin, that evil was rampant in the universe. He said only the superficial optimist who refuses to face the realities of life fails to see this patent fact. And in a world so fallen from grace, King's crucial insight was not so much the power of nonviolence, but his insistence that coercion was essential, that society would never change of its own accord. The world would not choose to do right, would never respond merely to moral persuasion. He lives for the ages. He became a world historical figure, not because he was a dreamer, because he was a realist. It kills me when young people today think Dr. King was a moderate. It just kills me. But there's one speech that I think, we all hear I Have a Dream, but the first speech he gave in Montgomery on December 5th, on Monday evening, right after Rosa Parks was arrested, I believe, on Thursday afternoon. And then, but on Monday evening at Holt Street Baptist, they had the first mass meeting. And Dr. King, like all good preacher, I guess he had 3 points. One being, he said, we believe in the teachings of Jesus. The only weapon we have in our hands is the weapon of protest. We're not going to go get our adversaries and kill them on some lonely road. We believe in love. And so he framed the movement in the explicit language of Christian redemption. And thereby he took the idea of nonviolent direct action, which did not have, I mean, nonviolence in the South, please. The notion that Black Southerners are somehow uniquely nonviolent is just, it's not a nonviolent. This is the dark and bloody ground of American history. And the movement was armed to the teeth. In fact, Glenn Smiley, a white Methodist preacher who worked with the Fellowship of Reconciliation, came down to Dr. King's house soon after the bus boycott started to see who this guy was, bringing with him Bayard Rustin. And the two of them are sitting in Dr. King's living room. Rustin sat down, and he sat down on a pistol, which startled him a good deal. Smiley wrote back to the Fellowship of Reconciliation a few days later, and he said, that his King was just as good as he sounds. He's eloquent, has a well-furnished mind. He's a sober and clear-headed leader. The only problem is he doesn't understand nonviolence. He says, and this is a direct quote, "This place is an arsenal." That's King's house. King did come to a full spiritual and philosophical commitment to nonviolence, but that was a bit later. After he had wrapped nonviolence up in the culture of the Black church and in the teachings of Jesus, the next thing he did was he deployed the rhetoric of American democracy in international politics. He knew that the central political reality in the world at that time was the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union in virtually every corner of the world, a battle for influence and resources, and that America's biggest weakness, its central problem in this competition with the Soviet Union, was its hypocrisy on the race question. Here, it's a mostly dark-skinned world. The Soviets just carried photographs of lynchings. They talked about, is this American democracy? This is not for you. This is not what they have in mind. We'll be much more generous. They had a big advantage that way. The State Department actually wrote a brief into the Supreme Court in the Brown decision explaining that this was the number one American problem in their foreign policy. But anyway, King frames the question around the Cold War. He says, if we were incarcerated behind the Iron Curtain of a communistic nation, we couldn't do this. But the glory of American democracy is the right to protest for right. Now, he wasn't a fool. He knew full well he didn't have protected freedom of speech. He knew they'd bomb his house, which they did. He was well aware that he might be killed. But he hung that out there, right? Are you going to live up to your creed? And so after embracing Christian love and the language of American democracy, he reminded his listeners that the Black freedom movement could either redeem or repudiate America's leadership in the world. And on behalf of the movement, he threatened to destroy America's position in the world. He said, God is not just the God of love, but God is also the God that standeth before the nations and says, be still and know that I am God. And if you don't, I'm going to cast you out of the your national and international relationships and break the backbone of your power. He said, not only must we use the tools of persuasion, but we have got to use the tools of coercion. So a realist grappling with a world in which power matters, in which love, it requires power to move toward justice and to protect the dignity of human personality and to protect a democracy that wasn't real yet. We weren't really a democracy, even technically till 1965. But rather than remember King as he was, we've transformed him into kind of a genial Black Santa Claus, benign vessel into which can be poured whatever sentiments the occasion may require. His radicalism, the confrontational nature of his methods, the public rebuke that he was to capitalism at its most careless, and to militarism, have given way to these sugar-coated depiction of a man who never existed. he and Mamie Till have that in common, you see. People always describe Mamie Till as saintly. Now, Beth Agnew Hood over here knows that there are saintly women in the world. That would be her mama, for example, my Aunt Merle. But it was, Mamie Till gets described as saintly, and she gets to, she's indomitable, she's courageous, Okay, all that's true. But the first thing that strikes me is she is politically savvy. She figured out who to call. The media was not the only thing. You get the labor unions, you get the Dawson machine, you get the newspapers, you get the organizational honeycomb of Black Chicago, and you take and any white allies you can get, and you take power and use it in the name of love. And that's Dr. King all the way. Emmett Till's name still rings through America. Tamir Rice, Emmett Till, how many black kids will you kill? They chant in front of the White House. They chant in all the streets in America. When they say her name, when they say his name, the Black Lives Matter generation never leaves out Emmett Till. Still speaking. I want to close by just saying what Mamie Till and what Martin Luther King have to say to us right now, which is that we have to organize a moral revolution of values, but we've got to summon the political will as well as the moral vision to do something about the situation that America has become mired in. Dorothy Day, the great Catholic saint, I can't believe they made her a saint. It's kind of like when I saw Malcolm X on a postage stamp. Anyway, Dorothy Day said, she used a term for it. She called it a revolution of the heart. So there's no substitute for political victory, and there's no substitute for community organization. What we've got to do is to take the organizations, look around us and see where is the power around me? Who do I have influence with? What are the organizations that I belong to? And Ella Baker from Littleton, North Carolina, the great genius of the civil rights movement, really is a strategist, said, don't start a new organization. Go find people who are trying to do what you think should be done and join them and help. And, we've got a lot of people working hard. You have to go find the movement. The North Carolina NAACP, like the one in Chicago in 1955, is just not your run-of-the-mill NAACP. It's an activist organization that's politically realistic and very energetic. It's the largest NAACP in the South and the most energetic NAACP in the country, the state conferences, I say. So that's one way to go. There's an organization called Repairers of the Breach, which essentially supports Reverend Dr. Barber's ministry and his work in the public square. There's also something's going to happen, by the way, in Eastern North Carolina, down in the Eastern North Carolina Black Belt, where if you raised the voter turnout by just a few percentage points, North Carolina Trump would have no chance of winning, and no Trumpist would have any chance of winning in North Carolina. Stacey Abrams and her organization, the New Georgia Project and Fair Fight, are already in touch with activists here and looking at 2022 as just a kind of an organizing thing, because it's not about one election. It's got to be about building the kind of community institutions, community power that can defend the moral values that we hold, that can move us toward a culture that's rooted in our best. We've already got everything we need. Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all of them, all of the major spiritual traditions in the world have a place for what agape love, for love for humanity, love for people you'll never meet. The same way that that, when women's rights activists, they're not organizing for their careers. They're organizing so little girls don't grow up stunted in their personality. The environmentalists are not, worried about their canoe trip down the river. They're worried about children being poisoned by drinking that water. We got a real water problem, by the way. Anyway, all of these different groups have a moral core that they don't always know they share, which is love. And I've seen atheists and agnostics get the Holy Ghost out in front of the legislature here in Reverend Barber. We've got to, that's what we got to do. We've got to organize out of our heart, out of our best traditions. We got great traditions, democratic traditions, faith traditions, political traditions, and love. So that's where we got to head. But we got to remember that this ain't about lighting a candle and singing a little song. It's not about feeling guilty. Don't bother feeling guilty. White liberals feel guilty and sort of wring their hands and they feel like they've done something. You don't have to be pure of heart to join a movement. You got to go find a movement though and help because this is all we got is people power. All we got is spirit power. We don't have armies, and we can't beat it. There's a river of money we're up against. But as long as we can keep the ballot, as long as we can protect the ballot, as long as what happened in the Capitol is put off the chart, as long as impairing somebody's right to vote is a felony and enforced, we'll be okay because there are more of us than there are them. And I'm persuaded that nobody ever kneels down beside the bed of their children and says, darling, if you could ever just destroy the public schools, your father and I would be so proud. That doesn't happen, right? They even know it's wrong, Read Gene Nichols' book. Anyway, so let's do it, I'm going, unlike Trump, I'm actually going to show up. So anyway, thank you very much for your patience and for being here this evening. And let's stay in touch.
Hey, happy MLK celebration. And the question that I'm going to answer for you today is, what does the world need more of? And I'm going to start by playing you a little song here.
There's only one binding force in the universe, and it's love.
That's it,
The
love.
universe is not a unified field like agriculture. It's a unified feeling. More love,
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with the vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, and rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This was an insert from the iconic I Have a Dream speech delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on August 28, 1963, in front of 250,000 supporters gathered at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
On August 28, 1963, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King gave a speech. The purpose of that speech was a call for civil and economic rights and to end racism in the United States. 58 years ago, Dr. King stood before 250,000 people and called for an end to racism. Today, January 15th, 2021, here we are again calling for an end to racism. The words Dr. King said in the iconic I Have a Dream speech rings as true today as it did then. Thank you, Charmaine, for that beautiful excerpt of Dr. King's speech. It has been through the generosity of private donors and each of you through your donations that we are able to gift 2 students with a monetary award. Just like Dr. King, we have a dream. Our dream is to help our students become successful change leaders. I have a dream today. I have a dream that next year, through your continued support, we will be able to gift more students with an I Have a Dream award. I am so very proud of the work with the MLK Planning Committee and the Foundation have done in creating a monetary award for 1 credit and 1 non-credit student. To qualify for this award, students are required to choose a quote from Dr. King that has inspired them to continue their academic, career, or life's journey. Today, I am honored to present to you the winners of the 2021 I Have a Dream Award. Miss Vu is our non-credit award winner from the cosmetology program. And Keziah Smalls is our award winner from information technology. Each of these students will read their winning essay. Thanks to all students who submitted their essay and application, and a special thank you, Durham Tech, for your continued support of the I Have a Dream Award. Take care, be safe.
Hello, my name is Thanh Phương Vu. I am from Vietnam. I study cosmetology at Durham Tech in 2020. I applied with the I Have a Dream scholarship. The title is Moving Forward. Martin Luther King Jr. once says, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." This quote and its theme of perseverance and overcoming obstacles have guided me in the pursuit of my educational and career goals. My educational journey, like those of many, was not easy. When I moved from Vietnam to America 2 decades ago, my English ability was limited. At the very beginning of my educational career in America, I have a hard time understanding my instructors and my co-work due to my limited knowledge of the English language. Despite this, I was determined to improve my skill and persisted through my core works, regardless of the boundaries. Over time, my English skill improved. Navigating college and life in the United States become easier. As a process closer toward my career goals, I could see my efforts coming to fruition. The seemingly endless nights I spent studying, crawling through the textbooks, and exercises were translated into even more success in my course. The crawling had turned into walking. But of course, this walking did not come without its own set of boundaries. At this point in my life, I was not only a student, but a mother, and I was working toward being able to provide for my family. The desire to provide for my family was and remains to be a primary motivator in my education and career journey. That being said, juggling the responsibility of raising a child and moving forward, both educationally and career-wise, have been anything but easy. Nonetheless, I have sought to optimize my opportunity by running as much as I can. One of the running trails I have taken recently in my pursuit of a cosmetology admit certification. I believe this will open up a wide variety of possibilities, including the opportunity to pursue something I have been passionate about for a long time. A career in cosmetology would also allow for greater opportunity to better provide for my family while allowing me to do something for myself and fueling my creative spirit, allowing it to take flight. I experienced boundless joy cutting and treating hair among the other things that I have learned how to do during my cosmetology course. The idea of being able to perform such procedure on clients, caring for them and making them feel good excited me as one of my other passion and major motivator is caring for people. My previous career endeavor allowed me to care for people, but it was not perfect fit for me. Despite this, I persevere at work and explore other options before discovering opportunity in cosmetology, and since then I have never turned back. Perseverance and the desire to care for others have been the motivator driven me toward my career goals. Ultimately, without the way the King's work carried, I would not be where I am today. So whenever I find myself in a tough patch, remind myself to do whatever I need to do in order to move forward, regardless of how small that action may be. Thank the scholarship committee for selecting me at the 2021 I Have a Dream Award winner. Thanks to all my instructors who support and believe in me. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Keziah Smalls and my program of study is Web Development. I've humbly been selected by the Scholarship Committee at Durham Technical College to read my winning essay for the I Have a Dream Award. I'm very thankful for the Scholarship Committee for choosing me to represent as the 2021 I Have a Dream winner. My submission title, I Have a Dream If You Can't, an MLK essay. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. This has been my quote for the past 4 years of my life. How skilled I became with web development as a student can only be credited towards my van-dwelling lifestyle. And yes, it is exactly what it sounds. I live in my van. My little chihuahua and I have been a part of the van-dwelling community for almost a full 4 years now, and we love it. Earlier into my web development ventures, I did not have a PC of my own quite yet. I was camping within the town of Knightdale, North Carolina at the time, and I was a local delivery girl. I did not have any internet access, which as an IT student is a big problem. I would still try to program because practice is key to evolving. Nonetheless, of course, while programming on my small Android phone, it killed my storage space, which also affected my way of delivery and GPS accessibility later. This means I really had to make sure my IT dedication did not enable me to lose my job as well. My dilemma was that public libraries did not allow anyone to download any IT software or IT networking security programs. This translates to not the best practice measures were available. As my solution to being an eager student despite shortcomings, I would drive to my campus during any free time, even on breaks, to utilize the computer labs available. It was a lot of gas. It was a lot of gas money, every time. But I stuck it out and was later rewarded with the PC I now have. All noticed by my campus, due to my financial status, yet persistence. I was initially inspired to fix common GPS issues by becoming a web developer myself. Ironically enough, the African American woman associated with and almost solely responsible for the innovation of GPS herself was not much different from myself. I know it is not a cosmic coincidence, and I would very much like it to be a part of my legacy, to finish what she had started so long ago. I'm used to taking what many see as outdated and useless items and morphing them into clever inventions. My wonderful renovated van showcases this. I have felt my pressurized with water temperature controlled shower system, my AC, which is also my cooler as well. I grill, I saute, I even blow dry my hair, all inside my van. Back in the day, while I was within the city of Cary, North Carolina, I was freezing with my chihuahua during the snowstorms. I had saved several van life renovation videos into my YouTube playlist. I would give my many comforters to my tiny pal to prevent his night from being so brutal and cold. Consistently, I could not feel my legs. Yet just as consistently, I would watch The Pursuit of Happiness every night with a smile. I knew that I would allow us better space and higher levels of comfort. I no longer would withhold from myself, and I've not since. My life has pushed me to push myself and, of course, succeed. It is truly amazing. Practice is key, and Dr. King was truly ahead of his time, indeed. Thank you.
What does the world need more of? It needs more conversations that are just conversations for the sake of having conversations. People trying to talk about policies, but they're trying to argue and win an argument. And all that tends to do is create more animosity between the sides instead of having a conversation just to explain their view of the policy or whatever their argument is about.
I want to thank you for making the time to come together with us and celebrate the legacy and teachings of Martin Luther King Jr. It is my privilege to introduce to you one of our special guest speakers for today. His mother is Grammy Award-winning artist, jazz musician Nina Freelon. And his father was the late Philip Freelon, whose architectural firm was the lead agency in the development of our National African American History and Culture Museum in Washington, D.C. Freelon's firm was also involved in the development of our Wynn Center, as well as one of the buildings on the campus of North Carolina Central University. The special guest speaker that I'm introducing you to is Pierce Freelon. Pierce is a native of Durham, and he still calls Durham his home with his lovely wife and 2 wonderful children. He has had numerous accolades himself. He has been involved locally and nationally in the music scene and social justice movement. In the area, he has created a place called Black Space, which allows Durham youth to explore the wonderful world of music and the music industry and all that music can teach us. Pierce has been privileged to teach African American diaspora studies and music at UNC Chapel Hill. Also, he has taught political science at North Carolina Central University. He has previously served on the North Carolina Arts Council. In addition to being an international music educator, he has recently appeared on NPR and The Today Show as he's promoting his children's album called DAD. And I highly recommend you checking it out. It has some really wonderful songs on it. I want to also share with you that just this August, Pierce has joined the Durham City Council as one of our newest City Council members. So thank you for your service, Pierce. And without further ado, I want to turn things over to Pierce Freelon so that he can talk with you about his interpretation of Martin Luther King's teachings and how they relate to our current situation of chaos or community as we try to figure out where we're moving forward from here.
Peace, love, respect. My name is City Council Member Pierce Freelon. I am here today to celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I was asked to talk on a particular subject, the subject of chaos or community. Where do we go from here? I know a lot of people in the United States right now feel like we're just kind of reeling and coming through a state of chaos with the national elections and coronavirus, and just what a wild and unprecedented year it's been with the racial inequity issues and new benchmarks with the Black female president. It's just, there's so much going on, and I think King's wisdom and grace is really important to recognize during times of great change and during these tumultuous times as well. So I want to lift up King as a cherished ancestor and to dig into some of his writings and thinkings to give us some perspective for not just where our country is at, but our entire planet and our beloved community here in Durham, North Carolina, for the people of Durham Tech on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So, yes, the question, the prompt rather, was chaos or community? Where do we go from here? So, first of all, I just want to say that I want to normalize chaos as a normal part of change. And as I think about things that are chaotic, some of the most beautiful things in the world kind of emerge from tumultuous or chaotic circumstances, such as childbirth. I'm a father of 2 kids, and anybody who's been in that delivery room, when the doctor says push, you know that you're in a chaotic environment. There's all types of blood and bodily fluids going everywhere. There's pain, there's stress, but there's also great happiness and joy. There are tears of all kinds, tears of pain and tears of absolute unbridled joy. And that juxtaposition is chaotic. It just is, both times. And I was there when one of my nephews was born as well. So I just want to normalize that beautiful things can come from chaos. When I think cosmically, so that's very intimate, childbirth, but also at the cosmic level, like a supernova is chaotic. When a star dies and then it kind of explodes, which is actually the event, and on the cosmic scale, that's where all of the heavy elements in our universe are created, in the blazing inferno of an exploding star. So there again, we have a very violent cosmic event that's chaotic and destructive even. But guess what? We wouldn't be here without supernovas. So we rely on those chaotic events for our very existence. Evolution is chaotic. The ways in which, genetic deformities or abnormalities or mutations kind of manifest in some of the biodiversity that we see that distinguish us from fish or insects or plants. We share a common ancestor with the trees biologically, and it's the chaos of evolution and that kind of the randomness of it is part of what allowed us to be here. And the last example I thought of was democracy. Democracy is chaotic. It always has been. It was a radical experiment, and it still is. But I'm glad to be situated in this experiment during this time in this country, because what a beautiful chaos democracy has proven to be. So the reason I bring that up, when I think about King and when I think about this idea of chaos or community, where do we go from here? I said, let's just start with demystifying the word chaos. It's not a dirty word or a bad word. I think it's a normal word and something that we should become familiar and comfortable with, because it's just a natural part of the human experience and, of course, of the human experiment and how we organize ourselves socially. So, I want to evoke the spirit of another ancestor, a Black woman named Octavia Butler, who was a science fiction writer. And she said, everything you touch, you change. Everything you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So she evokes that divine presence of God when she thinks about change. And I think that chaos is a normal part of change. When you've been doing something for a long time and you want to change it, the results could be very chaotic. So Octavia Butler calls on us to shape change, to shape change. And that's my question for us now, for all of us out here from Durham, in our community. We talk about chaos or community. How about chaos and community? How do we shape change? How do we mold it to do what King says? Martin Luther King Jr. said, we need to bend the moral arc of the universe towards freedom. So those cosmic metaphors are useful. King used them as well. He said we need to bend the moral arc of the universe towards freedom. And to me, that is about shaping change. Octavius said we got to shape change. King said we got to bend it. But essentially, they're both talking about the role that we play in taking the chaos and molding it and shaping it. And for me, when I think about shaping change, when I think about creating the world that I want to see and the community that I want to be in here in Durham, it brings me to my compass. How do you guide yourself through difficult times of radical transformation? And to me, it's important that we each have a compass. And one of my mentors that I met here in Durham was a dancer with the African American Dance Ensemble, a brother named Baba Chuck Davis. And before any event, he would always say, at the beginning and at the end, he would say, peace, love, and respect for everybody. You see, he had the hand motions too, so you didn't forget. Peace, love, respect for everybody. And when I bear witness to chaos, sometimes these words, they're my ideals, they're my North Star, they're my guiding light out of the mist, or out of the nebula, out of the primordial muck. I always ask myself, is my action centering peace? Am I grounded in gratitude and in love? Am I honoring and respecting myself, my community, my ancestors, my planet, with my choices and my voice? And if the answer is no, then I need to reassess my relationship to that decision. And it's okay. I think it's okay to consider something and to weigh it against your rubric, against your North Star, and make a decision. Chaos kind of offers you options. It's that lack of structure and the nature of disorder is such that kind of anything is possible. You know what I mean? When the stuff hits the fan and people are wilding out, anything is possible. And so it's in those moments of change where we need to have our compass, we need to have our North Star, we need to have our morals and our integrity intact. And I think about it like a jazz ensemble, like a solo. You've got options, or in hip hop we call it a freestyle. When you rap off the top of your head, we call it a freestyle. And what makes a soloist like a John Coltrane or a Thelonious Monk or a Nina Simone, what makes them really powerful is actually there's boundaries. By honoring some of the guidelines, of what key you're in and what tempo you're at and what rhythm you're rocking with, you can be free to explore infinite possibility within a certain framework. And that's what soloing is. That's what improvisation is. You're not just coming up to a piano and banging random notes, playing random notes. You're performing, you're singing, and you're manifesting and creating something within the boundaries, within the context of that chaos. And there's a lot of beauty there. So my mission for y'all is, ask yourself, what is your compass when you're creating community, when you're creating family, when you're doing your work? What is your compass? What is your moral base? Is it, Christianity and the Bible? Is it Islam or Confucianism? Or is it even a political ideology like radical Black feminism? What is your North Star and how will you use it to build community through chaos? I think that's the real question. And so I've been trying to make sure, when I ask the question, community or chaos, where do we go from here? I'm a member of Durham City Council. And so when I have a big decision in front of me, when I have to make a vote, on something that's going to impact to the community, I go back to my North Star. I go back to Baba Chuck. I say peace. Am I centering peace with this decision? And when I say peace, it starts within. You got to have peace within if you're gonna spread peace through your decision making. So it starts within, And from here it goes to my family, my beautiful wife and 2 children. Is there peace in my household? Is there peace in my family? And then it extends from there. How do we create peace in the community that I live in and then the city? And it radiates in, iterative fractals. You know, a fractal is something that's the same at the largest scale as it is at the smallest. So I'm working on building peace within myself, within my family, within my community, within my city. You know, in each tier, you can't really do it at the outer tier unless you do it at the inner tier first. So that's the first question. How do you radiate peace, you know, with the decisions and choices you make? Love is number 2. Love for myself. It starts with self-love, you know, and I love myself. Sometimes I look in the mirror, I say, I love myself. I want everybody to do that at some point today or this week. Look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself. Then look at the people or text them, call your grandma, call your, you know, the people in your life and your community, tell them you love them. And, you know, when you love yourself and you love your people, then when something's going down in the projects in MacDougall Terrace and Durham, you know, I see those as my own children. I love my brother and my sister and my gender non-conforming siblings and nibblings as I love myself. And I try with the work I do on city council and the work I do as an artist to spread that love through the policies that I advance and the vibrations that I put out in the universe. And the last thing is respect. Remember, Baba Chuck, peace, love, respect. Respect for other people's opinions that differ from my own. Respect for my own privilege and the access it affords me. And a recognition that it's my duty to make sure that those privileges are available to all. Respect for the planet, you know, respect is really key as well. So that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you today. Shouts to Baba Chuck Davis. Shouts to Octavia Butler. And of course, shouts to our beloved ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Definitely want to honor him. And I want to thank those 3 ancestors for giving me a blueprint. Because as I mentioned, as a father, as a husband, as a member of city council, as a creative, I try to center my purpose and my actions around those principles of peace, love, and respect for everybody, and around bending and shaping the moral arc of the universe towards those ideals, towards justice. So once again, my name is Pierce Freelon. It is a pleasure to serve you as your city council member, and it's been a pleasure sharing some space, energy, time, and dialogue with you on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So thank you, Durham Tech, for having me, and I'll see you later. Peace.
What does the world need more of?
Well, in my opinion, I think the world needs more of respect amongst each other. I think over time we've lost respect for everybody else's different opinions, self-respect as well, respect amongst older people, elders, respect for community. Yeah, I definitely believe that respect,
Okay.
especially here in the United States, where the United States is a big, known as the big melting pot. Different cultures, different backgrounds, different opinions, and as time's gone on, we seem to forget that.
Well, you've been kind of all over the world with in the Marine Corps, right?
Yes.
And you were in the Marines before you came to automotive. And so as a Marine, you've been all over the world and seen a lot of different things.
Yes.
And the second question would be, what would, in your opinion, what would Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. think about the Black Lives Movement today?
I think he would, in a sense, be probably happy that there's still African Americans or people of color still fighting for what they believe is right. Granted, some go about it the wrong way. Some
induce violence, which was not, what he stood for. Then there are some that decide to, take a stand, whether it be a political office, a local office, start some sort of organization that actually helps out the community. And I think that's what he would be proud of, the fight that some are still fighting in the good ways.
The Food Pantry has reopened at Durham Tech starting for the fall semester, and we have a new contactless curbside grocery pickup. So what our students will do is they can go on the Food Pantry's webpage and they will find the food assistance form. They will complete that form, and then the pantry staff will email or call the students and let them know there's a scheduled day and time for pickup. So then the students will come through and they will park by our tent and table outside, and they will be able to pick up their grocery order, their hygiene items, and maybe frozen meal or whatever other items that they had put on the order form. We will bring the items out, we will put the grocery bags on the table and step back. Students may then exit their vehicle, and if they're wearing a mask, they can approach and then take their groceries. And we will wipe down the table in between each use for safety purposes.
Hi, my name is Berta Mena. I am a business administration at Durham Tech, and I've been receiving the Durham Tech food assistance since the beginning of this semester. It's been helped my family tremendously. I'm a single parent to my two boys. They're 2.5 and 13 years old. With parent responsibilities, I also work full-time, and I'm currently taking 9 credit hours at Durham Tech. So all of that weighs heavy on me, and the relief of not having to cook some nights because of the weekly frozen meals gives me that time to be able to study with my busy schedule. So the assistant program has been a big blessing to my family. Thank you very much.
Hello, you guys. My name is Tiffany, and I'm currently a student at Durham Tech pursuing my ADN degree. Since COVID hit, Durham Tech has been an awesome resource to me and my family. They have provided frozen food meals, grocery pickup every week, snack bags for the kids, diapers for my 6-month-old, almost 7-month-old, baby food. I mean, the ultimate resource for me while I'm going through this struggle of providing for 3 kids, as well as going to school and working part-time. It has been the best thing I've ever had, with the support with Jess and Gabriel as well as Maggie. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I hope this continues throughout the year as this COVID pandemic still puts a damper on everybody's day.
Thank you so much for your support of the Campus Harvest Food Pantry. Your support makes it possible for us to provide great resources to our students who are parents, including diapers, wipes, baby food, formula, all kinds of things to make sure that their whole family is fed.
Your donations help us make over 100 deliveries per semester.
This fall semester, the Food Pantry served approximately 65 families on a weekly basis at our Food Pantry curbside pickup. As 2020 comes to an end, we are turning our sights on 2021, and we're hoping for a better year. That being said, even in a normal year, spring semester is our most difficult time to get food, and coronavirus certainly isn't going to be making that any easier on us. We appreciate any financial contribution that you can give to the Food Pantry so we can continue our expanded services to our students to serve them during this pandemic. Thank you.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, though I was admitted to the hospital the following day. I just had to see and feel it for myself, that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe, because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide.
And I'm honored to be able to pray with you today for the Martin Luther King Day celebration. Let everybody bow their heads, please. We thank for thee for this place in which we dwell, for the love that unites us, for the peace according to us this day, for hope with which we expect the morrow, for the health, the work, the food, and the hands that prepared it, for the bright skies that make our life delightful, and for our friends in all parts of the earth. Spares to us our friends, soften to us our enemies, bless us if it may be in all our innocent endeavors, if it may not give us strength to encounter that which is to come, that we may be brave in peril, constant in tribulation, temperate in wrath, and in all changes of fortune, and down to the gates of death, let us be loyal and love one another. Amen.
We hope that you have enjoyed the celebration thus far. In the conclusion of the book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Dr. King writes, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is still such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time, and life often leaves us standing bare, naked, and dejected with a lost opportunity. This may well be mankind's last chance to choose between chaos or community." Join us now for a Real Talk session as we reflect on Dr. King's conclusion from his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?